The morning sun had barely risen over Fort Benning when Sergeant Maya Chen stepped off the transport bus, duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The weight of it was nothing compared to the invisible burden she carried, being the only woman in the cycle of the Army's elite tactical training program. She took a deep breath of the Georgia pine-scented air and straightened her uniform. 29 years old with 6 years of exemplary service, Maya had earned her spot here through grit and skill, not connections or luck. Her test scores spoke for themselves. Top marks in marksmanship, orienteering, and physical fitness. None of that mattered now. Here, everyone started from zero. Last one off the bus is first one to do push-ups, barked Staff Sergeant Reynolds, his voice carrying across the training yard. Welcome to Hell Week, people. Maya dropped her bag and hit the ground, cranking out 30 perfect form push-ups without complaint. Several male soldiers followed suit, some sneaking sideways glances at her. Looks like we got ourselves a show-off, muttered a tall soldier with a Texas drawl. He wasn't speaking to Maya but made sure she could hear him. Guess they needed to check some boxes this year. Maya kept her face neutral. She'd heard it all before. Better to let her performance do the talking. The first day passed in a blur of paperwork, gear assignments, and preliminary assessments. By sunset, the 50-person cohort had been divided into 5 squads. Maya found herself assigned to Delta Squad, alongside 9 men who looked at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed disdain. "Listen up," said Staff Sergeant Reynolds, addressing the squads assembled in the mess hall. "You made it past the basic requirements to be here. That means nothing. Half of you won't make it through the first week. Another quarter will wash out before month's end. This program doesn't care about your feelings, your background, or what fancy college you went to. It cares about one thing. Can you perform when everything goes to hell?" He walked between the tables, hands clasped behind his back. "You will be pushed beyond your limits. You will fail. You will hurt. And then you'll get up and do it again until you get it right." His eyes lingered on Maya for a beat longer than the others. "Any questions?" Nobody spoke. "Good, rack time is 2,200 hours. Tomorrow starts at 04:30, dismissed." Maya headed toward the women's barracks, a small, separate building that would house only her for the next 12 weeks, assuming she made it that long. "Hey, Chen," called out a voice behind her. She turned to see a squad member with a closely shaved head and a sleeve of tattoos peeking out from his uniform. His name tag read Alvarez. "Some of us are grabbing coffee in the common area, going over the training manual." "You should join." Maya hesitated, weighing the invitation. Was it genuine or setting her up for more mockery? "Thanks. I'll be there in 10, she decided, heading to drop off her gear. The common area was sparsely furnished, a few worn couches, some folding chairs, and a coffee machine that looked like it had survived several wars itself. 5 of her squad members were already there, including Alvarez and the Texan, whose name she now knew was Cooper. "So Chen, what's your background?" asked a stocky soldier named Patel, who had the calm demeanor of someone who had seen combat. "Army intelligence, 2 deployments in Afghanistan, specialized training in counterinsurgency tactics," she answered, pouring herself a cup of the muddy coffee. "Intelligence?" Cooper's eyebrows shot up. "You mean like behind a desk?" "Some of it," Maya acknowledged. "And some not behind a desk." "I bet," Cooper said with a snicker that made his meaning clear. A couple others shifted uncomfortably. Alvarez shot Cooper a look. "Ignore him. He's still bitter because his girlfriend dumped him for a Navy guy." "She did not," Cooper protested, his face reddening. Maya allowed herself a small smile as she sat down with her coffee. "The training manual mentions an obstacle course tomorrow. Anyone familiar with it?" The conversation shifted to training, and for a while, Maya felt almost part of the group, until Sergeant Reynolds walked in. "Isn't this cozy?" he remarked, scanning the group. "Chen, a word." Maya followed him outside where the evening had turned cool and crickets chirped in the distance. "Your file says you requested this program specifically," Reynolds said without preamble. "Why?" "I believe I can contribute, Sergeant, and I want to serve where I'm needed most." Reynolds studied her face. "This isn't about proving something?" "No, Sergeant. Because if it is, you're going to fail. This program breaks people who come in with something to prove." "Understood, Sergeant." He nodded once. "Get some sleep, Chen. Tomorrow's going to hurt." Maya lay awake that night staring at the ceiling of her empty barracks. The isolation was both a blessing and a curse. No roommates meant no one to bond with, but also no one to witness any moments of doubt or weakness. Her thoughts drifted to her father, who had served 20 years in special forces before retiring to run a hardware store in Seattle. He rarely spoke about his service, but his quiet strength had always been her North Star. "Excellence doesn't need to announce itself," he'd told her once. "It just needs to show up day after day." Morning arrived with the jarring blare of a horn. Maya was dressed and outside in 4 minutes, joining the rest of her squad for pre-dawn physical training. 3-mile run, followed by the obstacle course, barked the training instructor, a compact woman with the hardened look of someone who had fought for every inch of respect she'd earned. "Let's see what you're made of." Maya paced herself on the run, finishing strong in the middle of the pack. The obstacle course was another matter. Mud walls, rope climbs, crawl spaces, and balance beams designed to test both strength and agility. She attacked each obstacle methodically, her smaller frame sometimes an advantage in tight spaces, sometimes a challenge on upper body portions. By the time she reached the final obstacle, a 30-foot climbing wall, her muscles burned and her uniform was caked. With Georgia red clay, Cooper had reached the wall just before her and was struggling with the rope climb, his heavier frame working against him. Maya began her ascent, finding hand and footholds in the rough surface. "Squad finishes together," called out Reynolds from below. "No one gets a time until everyone's over." Maya glanced down to see 3 squad members still on earlier obstacles. Cooper, now at the top, looked at her with frustration. "Great," he muttered. "We're going to be here all day waiting for paperwork to catch up." Paperwork. The nickname stung, but Maya pushed the feeling down and focused on the climb. To everyone's surprise, she reached the top just after Cooper and was already helping the next squad member up when Reynolds called out, "Time!" "Delta Squad, that's pathetic. Everyone except Chen drop and give me 20. Chen, you get 30 for finishing strong but not helping your squad enough." Confusion crossed Maya's face as she slid back down the wall and began her push-ups. The message was clear. Excel but not too much. Stand out but not too far. The next week fell into a grueling rhythm. Dawn to dusk training in tactics, weapon systems, communications, and field medicine, interspersed with physical challenges designed to push them to their limits. Maya excelled in the classroom portions and held her own in the field, but the squad dynamics remained strained. Her nickname evolved from paperwork to quota, a constant reminder that many believed she was only there to fulfill some diversity requirement. The breaking point came during the second week's night navigation exercise. Squads were dropped in different locations in the dense forest surrounding the base, given coordinates and tasked with navigating to extraction points using only compasses and terrain features. Delta Squad was making good time under a moonless sky when they reached a ravine not marked on their maps. "We need to head east and find a crossing point," Maya suggested, studying their compass. "The extraction point is due north," argued Cooper. "We should just cross here and keep going." "The ravine looks too steep," Maya countered. "We could lose time if someone gets injured." "We're losing time having this conversation," said Patel, siding with Cooper. "Majority says north." Maya knew she was right but felt the weight of the squad's impatience. "Your call," she conceded. Their attempt to descend the ravine went poorly. The slope was treacherous, loose soil giving way under their boots. Halfway down, Bell, the youngest squad member, lost his footing and slid 15 feet, twisting his ankle badly. The extraction now required them to fashion a stretcher and carry Bell, slowing them significantly. They arrived at the extraction point nearly an hour after every other squad. "What happened out there?" demanded Reynolds during the debrief. Cooper spoke up. "We took a bad route, sir. Bell got injured on a ravine crossing." "Whose idea was this route?" There was a moment of uncomfortable silence before several eyes turned to Maya. "We had a disagreement about the route, Sergeant," Maya said evenly. "I suggested going east to find a better crossing, but was outvoted." "So you knew the right call but couldn't convince your squad?" Reynolds pressed. "Yes, Sergeant." Reynolds looked at the group with disappointment. Leadership isn't just about having the right answer. It's about making sure people listen when it matters. Everyone gets extra PT tomorrow. Chen, you're running the session. As they filed out of the debrief, Maya felt the squad's resentment like a physical force at her back. She had been set up to fail, then punished for that failure, now placed in a position guaranteed to make her even more unpopular. That night in her empty barracks, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at a photo of her father on his last day of service, proud in his dress uniform with rows of ribbons she'd never asked about. "I don't know if I can do this, Dad," she whispered to the empty room. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here. The doubt sat heavy in her chest, a weight far greater than any rucksack she'd carried. But as the lights out call sounded across the base, Maya tucked the photo away and began preparing her gear for tomorrow. She hadn't come this far to quit now. One day at a time, one challenge at a time. Excellence doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to show up day after day. Maya's alarm buzzed at 0400, 15 minutes before required wake-up. She had learned early in her military career that those extra minutes of preparation made all the difference. Today, she needed them more than ever. Running the morning PT session for a squad that already resented her was a no-win situation. Push too hard, she'd be labeled a tyrant. Go too easy, she'd be seen as weak. Either way, she'd be giving them more reasons to doubt her. The sky was still dark when Delta Squad assembled on the training field, breath visible in the cold morning air. Maya stood before them, back straight despite the knot in her stomach. 10-mile ruck march, she announced. Full gear. Groans rippled through the group. Patel raised an eyebrow. That's the standard punishment, PT. You couldn't come up with something original, Chen? Maya met his gaze. Not a punishment. A chance to build endurance and squad cohesion. We were the last team to reach extraction yesterday. Today we trained to be the first. She shouldered her own pack, 60 pounds of gear, and moved to the front. I'll set the pace. Anyone falls behind, the whole squad circles back. We finish together or not at all. For the first mile, the squad kept pace grudgingly, the rhythmic crunch of boots on gravel the only sound. Maya maintained a challenging but sustainable speed, her focus forward ignoring the muttered comments behind her. Trying to break us on day one, she heard Cooper say to someone. Classic overcompensation. By mile 3, Bell was struggling with his injured ankle, though he hadn't said a word. Maya noticed his lagging pace and called a brief water break, pretending she needed it herself. How's the ankle? She asked Bell quietly while the others gulped water. I'm good, he insisted, though his face was pale with pain. Maya nodded and reached into her pack. I'm redistributing some weight. Training exercise. She pulled out several heavy items and added them to her own already full pack before the others could object. When they resumed, Maya could feel the extra weight digging into her shoulders but kept her pace steady. By mile 5, she heard a different kind of murmuring behind her. She's carrying more than any of us, Alvarez whispered. So what? Cooper replied, but with less conviction than before. At mile 8, they passed Bravo Squad, who had started their own PT session earlier. The look of surprise on their faces as Delta Squad marched past in tight formation was worth every aching muscle. They completed the 10 miles 20 minutes faster than any squad had done in the past week. As they dropped their packs at the finish point, Staff Sergeant Reynolds appeared, stopwatch in hand. Impressive time, Delta, he said, his expression giving away nothing. Especially with an injured man. He looked at Bell, then at Maya's overloaded pack. Creative weight distribution, Chen. The squad adapted to the situation, Sergeant, Maya replied. Reynolds almost smiled. Hit the showers. Tactical training begins at 0800. As they walked back to the barracks, Bell fell in step beside Maya. Thanks, he said simply. She nodded once, understanding that in this world, acknowledgement was worth more than gratitude. The afternoon brought a new challenge, close quarters combat training. The squads gathered in the hand-to-hand combat facility, a large mat-covered room with padded walls and a viewing area where instructors could observe. Today you'll learn techniques for neutralizing an enemy in confined spaces, announced the combat instructor. Sergeant Rivera, I need a volunteer for a demonstration. Several hands went up. Rivera ignored them all and pointed at Maya. Chen front and center. Maya stepped forward, keenly aware of the eyes on her. At 5'7", she was giving up several inches and at least 50 pounds to Rivera. In close quarters, size and strength matter, Rivera said to the group, but technique and speed matter more. Chen, attack me. Maya hesitated only a second before launching a textbook strike at Rivera's midsection. The instructor blocked it easily, then demonstrated a counter that left Maya flat on her back. The wind knocked out of her. Again, Rivera ordered as she got to her feet. 3 more times Maya attacked. and 3 more times she found herself on the mat. Each fall drew muffled laughter from some of the squad members. "Now watch carefully," Rivera said. "Chen, this time I want you to use the reversal technique from your file. The one you learned in your special training." Maya's brow furrowed. She had no idea what Rivera was talking about. "Sir? Your file mentions advanced close quarters training." "Show us." Maya felt a flush of embarrassment. Her file contained no such thing. This was a setup, designed to expose a lie she hadn't even told. "I haven't had any special training beyond standard Army combatives." "Sergeant," she admitted. Rivera looked surprised, then checked his clipboard. "My mistake." "Different Chen." The damage was done, though. More snickers from the group. More evidence that she didn't belong. "Let's continue with partner drills," Rivera said, moving on. "Pair up." No one moved to partner with Maya. After an awkward moment, Rivera paired her with Cooper, whose smirk made it clear he thought this was a joke. "Don't worry. I'll go easy on you," Cooper said as they squared off on the mat. Maya said nothing, focusing on Rivera's instructions for the disarming technique they were practicing. When it was her turn to try the move, she executed it precisely, using Cooper's weight against him. His look of surprise as she smoothly disarmed him was almost worth the morning's humiliation. "Lucky first try," he muttered, getting back to his feet. By the end of the 2-hour session, luck had nothing to do with it. Maya consistently executed the techniques with greater precision than most of her squad mates. Even Cooper had stopped making comments and was grudgingly asking her to demonstrate a wrist lock again. "Natural talent isn't the same as experience," Rivera noted as the session ended. "But it's a good start. Hit the classroom for tactical theory." Dismissed. The classroom portion should have been Maya's strong suit. With her intelligence background, she had studied more tactical theory than most combat specialists. But as the instructor discussed standard approaches to building clearing, she noticed something odd in the training manual they'd been issued. Several of the diagrams showed techniques that contradicted what she had been taught in Afghanistan by the Special Forces team she had worked with as a liaison. Their methods had been incredibly effective, saving lives during several high-risk operations. When the instructor opened the floor for questions, Maya raised her hand. "Sir, I've observed an alternative entry technique for corner clearing that reduces exposure time by approximately 0.8 seconds per turn. Would it be appropriate to demonstrate?" The classroom went quiet. The instructor, Lieutenant Walsh, looked intrigued. "Please do, Sergeant Chen." Maya walked to the front and used the whiteboard to sketch a modified version of the diagram from their manual. By adjusting the angle of entry and utilizing a rolling step rather than the standard pivot, the point man reduces their profile in the fatal funnel and creates less predictable movement patterns for any waiting hostiles. Walsh studied her diagram with interest. "Where did you learn this technique?" "I observed it in action during joint operations in Kandahar, sir. The Special Forces team I was attached to used it successfully during multiple building clearances in dense urban environments." Before Walsh could respond, Cooper's voice cut through the classroom. "So now you're a Special Forces expert too? First the magical missing combat training, now this?" "I didn't claim to be an expert," Maya replied evenly. "I'm sharing relevant field observations that might benefit the squad." "Or making stuff up to stand out," Cooper shot back. "Next you'll tell us you were secretly a Navy SEAL too." A few laughs rippled through the room. Walsh called for order. "That's enough, Cooper." He turned back to Maya. "The technique is interesting, Chen, but we'll stick with the manual for now. Take your seat." Maya returned to her desk, face burning. She could feel the skepticism from her squad mates, their belief that she was fabricating stories to compensate for her perceived inadequacies. That evening, alone in her barracks, Maya pulled out a small notebook and began sketching the building entry technique again, this time with more detailed notes. Her father had taught her to document everything, a habit that had served her well in intelligence work. A knock on her door startled her. She tucked the notebook away and opened the door to find Alvarez standing there looking uncomfortable. "We're doing some extra practice on those disarming techniques," he said. "Thought you might want to join." Maya studied his face for signs of a setup but found none. "Who's we?" "Me, Patel, Bell, and Zhang. We're meeting in the auxiliary gym." She hesitated, then grabbed her gym bag. "Lead the way." The small group practiced for over an hour, taking turns as attacker and defender. Maya demonstrated the wrist lock that Cooper had struggled with, earning grudging nods of approval. Where did you really learn that reversal move? Patel asked during a water break. The one Rivera mentioned. I didn't, Maya said. There was nothing in my file about special combat training. He mixed me up with someone else. Patel looked skeptical. You picked up those techniques pretty quick for someone with no extra training. Maya shrugged. My dad taught me some basics growing up. Self-defense stuff. The rest is just paying attention. Your dad military? Zhang asked, joining the conversation. 20 years. Retired now. What unit? Patel pressed. Maya hesitated. Her father rarely discussed his service, changing the subject whenever she asked about specifics. He doesn't talk about it much, she said finally. Just some army unit. Nothing special. They clearly didn't believe her, but no one called her out directly. Progress of a sort. The next morning brought the challenge Maya had been dreading since arriving at Fort Benning, the live fire tactical exercise. Squads would run through a combat scenario with real ammunition, demonstrating their ability to move, communicate, and engage targets under pressure. As Delta Squad geared up, Reynolds pulled them into a huddle. This isn't a game, he said, his voice deadly serious. Live rounds, live consequences. You follow protocols exactly or I pull you out, clear? Clear, Sergeant, they responded in unison. Reynolds assigned positions. Maya was designated as the team's rear security, the position typically given to the least trusted member. She accepted it without comment. As they entered the course, the familiar weight of her rifle against her shoulder was reassuring. This, at least, was something she excelled at. The squad moved through the first section smoothly, engaging pop-up targets with precision. Then came the building entry, the very scenario Maya had discussed in class. Cooper was on point with Patel as his partner. They approached the doorway using the manual's prescribed method. Maya watched from her position, a knot forming in her stomach. The angle was all wrong. From where she stood, she could see a target placement through the window that would have a clear shot at Cooper as soon as he pivoted through the door. Cooper, adjust entry angle 30 degrees, she called over the radio. Target has line of sight. Stick to rear security, Chen, came Cooper's terse reply. He continued his approach exactly as the manual dictated. Maya made a split-second decision. Cover me, she said to Zhang, then moved quickly forward, reaching Cooper just as he prepared to enter. What the hell are you doing? He hissed. Saving your life, she replied, demonstrating the rolling entry she had described in class. Like this. Trust me. Cooper's eyes narrowed, but something in Maya's intensity must have reached him. He nodded once. When they breached the door, Cooper used Maya's technique. The target activated exactly where she had predicted, but Cooper's modified entry kept him out of the line of fire long enough to engage and neutralize it. The rest of the exercise went smoothly, with Delta Squad finishing with the highest accuracy rate of the day. As they exited the course, Reynolds was waiting, his face unreadable. Chen, a word. Maya stepped aside, expecting a reprimand for breaking position. Instead, Reynolds asked, Where did you learn to spot that target setup? It wasn't visible from your assigned position. Window reflection, sir, she answered truthfully. I saw the silhouette and calculated the likely angle of fire. Reynolds studied her for a long moment. Good initiative, he said finally. But next time, make sure your team lead acknowledges your warning before you break position. That's all. It wasn't exactly praise, but coming from Reynolds, it was close enough. As they walked back to turn in their gear, Cooper fell in step beside her. That entry technique, he said awkwardly. It worked. Yes, Maya replied simply. You could show the rest of us, if you want. It wasn't an apology, but it was an opening. Maya nodded. Tomorrow morning, before PT. For the first time since arriving at Fort Benning, she felt a glimmer of what might eventually become respect. The next 2 weeks brought small but noticeable changes in Delta Squad's dynamics. Maya's morning sessions on tactical entry techniques drew not just Cooper, but eventually the entire squad. What began as reluctant curiosity evolved into genuine interest as they recognized the efficiency of her methods. Where exactly did you see this used? Patel asked one morning as they practiced the rolling entry for the 5th time. Kandahar province, Maya replied, demonstrating the move again. We were supporting a night raid on a suspected bomb maker. The team I was attached to used this technique on every doorway. And you just watched and remembered? Cooper sounded skeptical but not accusatory. a subtle shift from his earlier attitude. Maya shrugged. I pay attention to things that keep people alive. The conversation might have continued, but Staff Sergeant Reynolds appeared at the edge of the training area. The squad snapped to attention. At ease, Reynolds said, watching them with evaluating eyes. Interesting morning routine you've developed? Extra practice, Sergeant, Maya explained. Working on building entry techniques. Reynolds nodded slowly. I've been watching. Unorthodox approach, but effective. Where did you pick it up, Chen? Maya gave the same explanation she'd given her squad mates. Reynolds listened, his expression revealing nothing. Initiative is good, he said finally. But remember, there's a reason for standard protocols. They're predictable so your team knows exactly what you'll do in high-stress situations. He paused. That said, adaptability is also valuable. Carry on. As he walked away, Zhang let out a low whistle. That's the closest thing to approval I've ever heard from Reynolds. Don't get excited, Cooper said, but his tone lacked its usual edge. He's still going to work us until we break. True to Cooper's prediction, that afternoon's training pushed them to new limits. The exercise, a simulated hostage rescue under chaotic conditions. Smoke machines, sound effects mimicking gunfire and explosions, and role players acting as both hostages and hostiles created a disorienting environment. Delta Squad was given minimal planning time before being thrust into the scenario. Cooper, as team lead, quickly assigned positions. Chen, you're on point with me, he said, surprising everyone. Your entry technique might give us an edge in the smoke. Maya nodded, hiding her surprise. This wasn't just acceptance, it was acknowledgement of her value to the team. The scenario began with a bang, literally. A flashbang grenade signaled the start, and Delta Squad moved in through the designated entry point. Immediately they were enveloped in thick smoke, visibility reduced to mere feet. Maintain formation, Cooper ordered through their comms. Chen, lead the entry. Maya moved forward, using the building's wall as a guide. When they reached the first doorway, she signaled Cooper and executed the rolling entry they'd practiced, smoothly clearing the corner and identifying a role player hostile before he could react. Hostile down, she reported, allowing the squad to advance. Room by room, they cleared the structure, identifying hostiles and securing the role-playing hostages. Maya's entry technique proved its worth in the low visibility conditions, allowing the team to maintain momentum while minimizing exposure. They were making good progress until they reached a hallway with multiple doorways. Standard procedure would have them clear each room systematically, but that would take precious time. Time the hostages might not have. Split into fire teams? Patel suggested. We can clear twice as fast. Cooper hesitated. Splitting the team went against their training for this scenario, but the clock was ticking. Too risky, Maya said, studying the layout. Something about it triggered a memory. A similar scenario she'd observed during her deployment. I have another approach. She quickly outlined an alternative, leapfrogging teams that would cover each other while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. It wasn't in their manual, but it would allow them to clear the rooms more efficiently while keeping the team essentially together. Cooper made his decision. We'll try Chen's method. Alvarez, Zhang with me. Patel, Bell with Chen. Execute on my mark. The technique worked beautifully. They cleared the remaining rooms in record time, locating and securing all hostages with minimal simulated casualties. As they exited the building with the hostages, Staff Sergeant Reynolds was waiting, stopwatch in hand. 14 minutes, 22 seconds, he announced. Fastest run of the day by almost 3 minutes. He looked at Cooper. Interesting tactical choice on that hallway. Not standard procedure. Chen's suggestion, sir, Cooper said without hesitation, adapted from a technique she observed in the field. Reynolds turned his gaze to Maya. You're full of surprises. Chen, the instructors are starting to notice. There was something in his tone. Not quite suspicion, but curiosity. Back at the barracks, the squad's mood was upbeat. They'd outperformed every other team, and even Reynolds had seemed impressed. We should celebrate, Alvarez suggested. Sneak some beers back to the barracks. And get kicked out 3 weeks in? No thanks, Patel replied. But I'm up for heading to the PX for some actual food instead of mess hall slop. The squad agreed unanimously, and for the first time, Maya was included without hesitation. As they walked to the PX, she found herself between Bell and Zhang, engaged in normal conversation about the training, their homes, their reasons for joining the program. It wasn't friendship, not yet. but it was a world away from the isolation of those first weeks. The next day brought a new challenge: specialized weapons training. The squads gathered at the long-range shooting facility, where tables displayed an array of weapons not typically issued to standard infantry units. "Today you'll be introduced to specialized tactical tools," announced the range master. "These are weapons you might encounter in advanced operations, particularly when working alongside special operations teams." He walked them through each weapon: a modified M4 with advanced optics, a compact submachine gun designed for close quarters, several different sidearms, and finally, a precision bolt-action rifle. "This last one is of particular interest," he said, lifting the rifle. "The M110 semi-automatic sniper system. Who here has experience with precision shooting?" Several hands went up, including Maya's. The range master pointed to her. "Chen, take position and show us what you've got." Maya approached the shooting table where the rifle waited. She'd qualified as an expert marksman in basic training and had maintained those skills throughout her career. But this particular weapon was new to her. She took a moment to familiarize herself with the rifle, checking its weight and balance, adjusting the scope, and settling into a comfortable shooting position. The target was positioned at 600 yards, a challenging but not impossible distance for this weapon. "Whenever you're ready," the range master said. Maya took a deep breath, calculated for wind and distance, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, and through the scope she saw her bullet hit just left of center on the target. "Adjustment needed for windage," she muttered, making a small change to the scope. Her second shot hit dead center. "Good correction," the rangemaster noted. "Now the movement target." A second target began moving laterally across the range at varying speeds. This was the real test. Hitting a moving target at distance required not just accuracy but timing and intuition. Maya tracked the target through her scope, calculating lead time based on its speed. She fired 3 shots in quick succession. All 3 hit. "Impressive," the rangemaster said, genuine approval in his voice. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My father taught me," Maya answered honestly. "We used to go hunting when I was younger." "Your father must be quite the marksman," he replied, taking the rifle from her. "That's not typical civilian-level shooting." Maya said nothing, but she noticed several of her squad mates watching her with newfound curiosity. That afternoon, as they cleaned their weapons after training, Cooper sat down beside her. "So your dad was just some army unit, huh?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "That's what he told me," Maya replied, focusing on the disassembled parts of her rifle. "Most dads don't teach their kids to shoot like that, or those entry techniques you knew." Maya reassembled her weapon with practiced ease. "What's your point, Cooper?" He shrugged. "Just thinking there's more to your story than you're sharing, and wondering why. Maybe there's nothing to share, or maybe it's not my story to tell." She met his eyes. "Does it matter?" Cooper considered this. "I guess not. As long as you keep helping us beat the other squads." It wasn't quite trust, but it was a truce of sorts. Maya would take it. The next day brought the most intensive test yet, the field training exercise. 5 days in the Georgia wilderness, living off minimal supplies, completing objectives while evading enemy forces played by senior instructors. It would test not just their tactical skills but their endurance, teamwork, and ability to function under extreme conditions. As they packed their gear, Reynolds briefed them on the parameters. "This is as close to the real thing as we can make it," he said. "You'll be given coordinates for 5 objectives. Complete them in any order, but all must be accomplished within the time limit. Enemy forces will be actively hunting you. If engaged, you will be marked with paint rounds. 3 hits and you're dead, removed from the exercise." He looked at each of them. "This is where we separate those who can hack it from those who can't. Work together, use your training, and maybe you'll make it." Back in one piece, they were transported by helicopter to their insertion point, a small clearing in dense woods, and given their first set of coordinates before the helicopter departed, leaving them alone in the gathering dusk. Cooper immediately took charge. "Let's move to cover and assess our objectives." They established a hasty hide site and reviewed their mission parameters. 5 objectives spread across 20 square kilometers of rugged terrain. Recover intelligence from a downed drone, destroy an enemy supply cache, capture a high-value target, establish a communication relay at high ground, and exfiltrate from a designated extraction point, all while avoiding or neutralizing enemy patrols. "We should start with the drone recovery," Patel suggested. Intel says it's the closest objective. Agreed, Cooper said. We move in 3 minutes. Chen, you're on point navigation. Alvarez, rear security. Maya felt a swell of pride at the assignment. Point navigator was a position of trust, responsible for guiding the entire squad through unfamiliar territory. That Cooper had given it to her without hesitation showed how far they'd come. As night fell completely, Delta Squad moved through the forest with practiced stealth, using the darkness as cover. Maya led them confidently, using her compass and the stars to maintain their heading. Her father had taught her to navigate this way on camping trips, lessons she'd never imagined would prove so valuable. They reached the drone site shortly before midnight, successfully recovering the intelligence package without alerting the instructors patrolling the area. 1 objective down, 4 to go. Supply cache next, Cooper decided. It's furthest from our current position, but getting it done will give us more flexibility for the remaining objectives. No one argued. The squad moved out, settling into the rhythm of tactical movement. Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since arriving at Fort Benning. She belonged. Not because they'd suddenly become friends, but because they'd become something more valuable, a team that trusted each other's skills and judgment. As they navigated through a particularly dense section of forest, Maya suddenly raised her fist, the signal to halt. The squad froze instantly. Movement ahead, she whispered, pointing to a barely visible path crossing their route. Enemy patrol, moving west to east. Cooper crawled forward to her position, squinting into the darkness. I don't see anything. Trust me, Maya insisted. 3 instructors about 200 meters ahead. They'll cross our path in approximately 2 minutes. Cooper studied her face, then nodded. Change of route. We'll hold position until they pass, then circle around to approach the cache from the north instead. They waited in absolute stillness as the patrol passed exactly where Maya had indicated. Only when she gave the all-clear did the squad resume movement. How did you spot them? Chang asked as they detoured north. I couldn't see a thing, Maya shrugged. Pattern recognition. The birds stopped singing in sequence as something moved through their territory. It wasn't the full truth. What she'd actually noticed was the faint infrared glow of the instructor's night vision equipment, something she shouldn't have been able to see with her standard-issue gear. It was a skill her father had taught her, one of many that seemed to exist in a gray area between standard military training and something more specialized. As the night deepened, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this exercise was more than just another test. The way Reynolds had been watching her, the instructor's growing interest in her background, something was happening. Something beyond the usual training program dynamics. Whatever it was, she would face it as she had faced everything else. One challenge at a time with determination and skill. After all, that's what her father had taught her to do. And so far, his lessons hadn't steered her wrong. Dawn broke on the 3rd day of the field exercise, finding Delta Squad hidden in a rocky outcrop overlooking a small valley. They had successfully completed 3 of their 5 objectives, recovering the drone intelligence, destroying the enemy supply cache, and establishing the communication relay. Their remaining tasks were to capture the high-value target and reach the extraction point. Maya kept watch while the others caught brief moments of sleep. 48 hours of constant movement, minimal food, and the constant stress of avoiding enemy patrols had left them exhausted but focused. This wasn't just training anymore. It had become a test of will. She studied the terrain through binoculars, mentally mapping their route to the target's suspected location. According to their intelligence, the high-value target, likely an instructor playing the role, would be moving between 2 camps during the morning hours. Movement at the edge of the tree line caught her attention. Not instructors this time, but another squad, Charlie Squad, judging by their formation. They were moving toward the same objective. Cooper, Maya whispered, waking the team leader. We've got company. Charlie Squad is approaching from the south. Cooper was instantly alert. He took the binoculars, observed the other squad, and then gathered everyone for a hasty briefing. Change of plans, he said quietly. Charlie's going to beat us to the target if we stick to our original route. We need to move faster, which means more exposure. Or, Maya suggested, we could use a different approach altogether. She pointed to a steep ravine cutting through the eastern side of the valley. That ravine isn't on any of the maps they gave us, but it looks like it leads directly behind the target's first camp. We could set up an ambush, Cooper frowned. How do you know that ravine is there if it's not on our maps? I spotted it during our comms relay setup. The angle from the high ground showed terrain features not visible on our satellite imagery. The squad exchanged glances. It was a risk, trusting Maya's observation over their official maps, but she had yet to steer them wrong. We go with Chen's route, Cooper decided. But we need to move now. They descended from their hiding place, moving in silent single file toward the ravine. The terrain was treacherous, loose rocks, tangled underbrush, and the constant threat of enemy patrols. Every step required careful placement, every movement calculated to minimize noise. Maya led them confidently, navigating as if she'd traveled this path before. In truth, she was relying on skills her father had taught her years ago. How to read the land, how to move with it rather than against it, how to disappear into the environment instead of fighting it. They reached the ravine to find it even steeper than it had appeared from a distance. A nearly vertical descent awaited them. "This is suicide," Belle whispered, peering over the edge. "We'll break our necks." "There's a route," Maya insisted, pointing to a barely visible game trail zigzagging down the slope. "It's passable. I can lead the way." Cooper studied the ravine, then Maya's face. "You're sure about this?" "Positive," he nodded once. "Lead on." Maya began the descent, finding hand and footholds where others might see only impossible drops. The squad followed, mimicking her movements, trusting her judgment completely. A far cry from those first days when they'd questioned her every suggestion. The descent took nearly an hour, but they reached the bottom undetected. The ravine led exactly where Maya had predicted, behind a small clearing where a camouflaged tent stood partially hidden among the trees. Cooper signaled for them to hold position while he and Maya conducted reconnaissance. They crawled forward through the underbrush until they could observe the camp clearly. A single figure in instructor uniform sat by a small, smokeless camp stove, heating what appeared to be morning coffee. "The high-value target." "Too easy," Cooper whispered. "Where's his security?" "There." Maya pointed subtly toward two nearly invisible positions flanking the camp. "And there." Two instructors, both with paint guns. Cooper squinted. "I don't see anyone." "Trust me," Maya said. "They're there. Standard protective formation. We need to neutralize them simultaneously before taking the target." Cooper gave her a searching look. "You've done this before." "For real, it wasn't a question." Maya held his gaze but said nothing. "Later," Cooper decided. "For now, we use your plan." "How do we approach?" They rejoined the squad and Maya outlined her strategy. A three-pronged approach that would neutralize the hidden security before capturing the target. It required perfect timing and complete trust in each other's abilities, things that would have been impossible weeks earlier. "Jung, Alvarez, you take the left security position. Patel, Bell, the right. Cooper and I will handle the target. On my signal, execute simultaneously." No one questioned her taking the lead on this operation. Even Cooper, as team leader, recognized that she was operating from experience, not just training. They moved into position with practiced stealth. Maya and Cooper approached the target from behind, using natural cover to mask their approach. When they were within 20 meters, Maya raised her hand, waited 3 heartbeats, then dropped it sharply. The squad moved as one. Paint rounds found the hidden instructors before they could react, while Maya and Cooper rushed the target from behind. The entire operation took less than 30 seconds. The instructor playing the high-value target looked up from his suddenly cold breakfast with genuine surprise as Cooper pressed a training knife to his back and Maya secured his hands. "Delta Squad," Cooper announced formally. "You've been captured, sir." The instructor's surprise gave way to a reluctant smile. "Impressive approach. You came through the ravine?" "Yes, sir," Cooper replied. "Interesting choice. Not on any of the maps we provided." The instructor's eyes found Maya. "Someone has good instincts." "Chen spotted it, sir," Cooper said without hesitation. The instructor studied Maya with new interest. "Well done, Delta. Target secured. You're clear to proceed to extraction." As they prepared to move out, the radio crackled to life. Staff Sergeant Reynolds' voice came through, unusually tense. "All squads, be advised. Exercise parameters have changed. A severe weather system is moving into the area. All teams are to proceed immediately to emergency extraction point Echo. Acknowledge." Cooper keyed his radio. "Delta acknowledges. Moving to extraction point Echo." The change was significant. Echo was nearly 10 kilometers from their position, through dense forest and rising terrain. And severe weather in Georgia this time of year could mean anything from thunderstorms to tornadic activity. "Let's move," Cooper ordered, all traces of triumph at their successful mission replaced by focused urgency. They set out at a fast pace, aware that speed now mattered more than stealth. The sky darkened ominously above them as they pushed through the forest, the humidity rising to uncomfortable levels. After an hour of hard movement, they heard the first distant rumble of thunder. The wind picked up, bending trees and sending leaves swirling around them. "We need to find cover and wait it out," Patel suggested as the first raindrops began to fall. "Negative," Cooper replied. Orders were clear. We pushed through to Echo. The rain intensified quickly, turning from scattered drops to sheets of water that reduced visibility to meters. The forest floor became slick with mud, making each step treacherous. Maya moved to the front alongside Cooper. "We need to adjust our route," she shouted over the increasingly heavy rainfall. "This valley will flood if the storm is as bad as it sounds." Cooper nodded grimly. "Alternatives?" Maya pointed to a ridgeline visible through the rain. "Higher ground. Longer route but safer. Lead the way." The squad changed direction, beginning the tough climb up muddy slopes toward the ridge. The storm continued to intensify, lightning now flashing regularly, followed by crashes of thunder that seemed to shake the ground. Halfway up the slope, disaster struck. Bell, still nursing his ankle injury from weeks earlier, lost his footing on the slick ground. He fell, sliding several meters down the hillside before crashing into a fallen tree with a cry of pain. Maya was the first to reach him. "Where are you hurt?" Bell's face was white with pain. "My leg. I think it's broken." A quick examination confirmed his assessment. The bone wasn't protruding, but the unnatural angle left little doubt about the fracture. "We need to stabilize it and carry him," Maya told Cooper, who had joined them. "That will slow us to a crawl," Zhang pointed out, having to shout over the storm. "And we're running out of time." "We're not leaving him," Cooper said firmly. "No one's suggesting that," Maya replied. "But we need to be smarter about this." She scanned their surroundings, making a quick decision. "There's a rock formation about 300 meters up. It should provide shelter. We get Bell there, stabilize the leg properly, then build a stretcher for the remainder of the journey." No one had a better suggestion. Using a branch as a splint and their belts to secure it, they stabilized Bell's leg enough to move him. The going was painfully slow, with squad members taking turns supporting Bell's weight. By the time they reached the rock formation, more of a shallow cave than anything else, they were all exhausted, soaked to the skin and significantly behind schedule. While the others got Bell settled, Maya pulled Cooper aside. "I'm going to scout ahead. There might be a vehicle access road on the other side of this ridge. If there is, we could signal for extraction there instead of trying to carry Bell all the way to Echo." Cooper shook his head. "Too risky in this weather. And we don't split the team." "We're not going to make it to Echo carrying Bell through this," Maya argued. "The storm's getting worse. This is our best option." Cooper studied her face, then glanced back at Bell, whose pain was evident despite his attempts to hide it. 2 hours. If you're not back, we're continuing to Echo with or without you." "I'll be back in 1, Maya promised. She set out into the storm alone, moving with surprising speed despite the conditions. There was something almost familiar about this situation. The pressure, the injury, the need to find an alternative solution. Her father had trained her for scenarios like this, though she'd never understood why a civilian would need such specific survival skills. The rain continued to pound down, but Maya pushed forward, reaching the top of the ridge in record time. From this vantage point, she could see for miles despite the weather, and there, just as she'd suspected, was a narrow gravel road winding through the valley on the far side of the ridge. She was about to turn back when movement caught her eye. A vehicle was approaching along the road, a military Humvee moving slowly in the poor conditions. Making a split-second decision, Maya descended the ridge toward the road. If she could flag down the vehicle, they might be able to get help for Bell immediately rather than waiting to reach the extraction point. She reached the road just as the Humvee approached, waving her arms to catch the driver's attention. The vehicle slowed, then stopped. The passenger door opened to reveal not an instructor, but a silver-haired man with colonel's eagles on his collar. "Bit far from your exercise zone, aren't you, soldier?" the colonel said, his voice carrying an authority that went beyond rank. Medical emergency, sir, Maya replied, standing at attention despite the rain pouring down her face. One of my squad has a broken leg. We need extraction. The colonel studied her for a moment. Name and squad? Sergeant Maya Chen, Delta Squad, sir. Something flickered in the colonel's eyes. Recognition or perhaps confirmation of something suspected. Where's the rest of your squad? Sheltering in a cave formation about half a click north of this position, sir. I was scouting for an extraction route. The colonel nodded once. Get in, Sergeant. We'll go collect your squad. As Maya climbed into the Humvee, soaked and mud-spattered, she couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was somehow less random than it appeared. The colonel's next words confirmed her suspicion. Chen, he said as they started moving. Any relation to Master Sergeant Thomas Chen, retired? Maya's breath caught. My father, sir. The colonel nodded, a slight smile crossing his weathered face. I thought as much. You move like him. Before Maya could ask what he meant, they arrived at the base of the ridge. Lead the way to your squad, Sergeant, the colonel ordered. As they climbed toward the cave where Delta Squad waited, Maya wondered just who this colonel was, and what exactly he knew about her father that she didn't. Maya led the colonel up the muddy slope toward the cave where Delta Squad waited. The rain had intensified, creating small rivers of runoff that made the climb treacherous. Despite the conditions, the colonel kept pace easily, showing none of the strain one might expect from a man his age. Just around this bend, sir, Maya said, pointing to the rock formation ahead. As they approached, Cooper emerged from the shelter, eyes widening at the sight of the colonel. Sir, he snapped to attention despite the rain and mud. At ease, the colonel said. I understand you have an injured man. Yes, sir. Private Bell has a broken leg. We were attempting to reach Extraction Point Echo as ordered. The colonel nodded. Change of plans. Get your squad ready to move. My driver will help transport the injured man to the vehicle. Cooper didn't hesitate. Within minutes, Delta Squad had gathered their gear and fashioned a makeshift stretcher for Bell. The colonel's driver, a stone-faced sergeant, helped them navigate the treacherous descent to where the Humvee waited. With Bell secured in the vehicle, the rest of the squad arranged themselves as best they could in the remaining space. The colonel took the passenger seat again with Maya directly behind him. As they began the slow journey through the storm, the colonel spoke over his shoulder. You handled the situation well. Sergeant Chen, creative problem-solving under pressure. Thank you, sir, Maya replied, acutely aware of her squad mates listening. Your approach to the high-value target capture was particularly interesting. The colonel continued, coming through that unmapped ravine. Not standard procedure. Maya exchanged a glance with Cooper. The mission required adaptation, sir. Indeed it did. The colonel fell silent for a moment, then added, Your father used to say that maps only tell you what someone else has already seen. The real world always has secrets they missed. A chill that had nothing to do with her wet clothes ran down Maya's spine. That was one of her father's favorite sayings, one he'd repeated during their hiking trips when she was younger. How did this colonel know that? The drive continued in silence for several minutes, the Humvee bouncing over the rough road as the storm raged around them. Finally, they emerged from the forest onto a wider paved road that Maya recognized as leading back toward the base. Sir, Cooper spoke up, may I ask if the exercise has been canceled due to the weather? For your squad, yes, the colonel replied. The others will continue as conditions permit. Your team's performance has provided sufficient evaluation data. The phrasing was odd, evaluation data rather than assessment, but no one commented on it. They were too relieved to be heading back to base, especially with Bell's injury. When they reached Fort Benning, medical personnel were waiting to transport Bell to the base hospital. The colonel instructed the rest of Delta Squad to get cleaned up and report to Training Hall C in 2 hours. Full uniform, he added. This is an official debrief. As the squad dispersed toward the barracks, Cooper caught up with Maya. That colonel knows your father, he said without preamble. Apparently, Maya replied, her mind still processing that fact. Any idea who he is? Maya shook her head. Never seen him before today. Cooper studied her for a moment. This whole training program, I'm starting to think it's not what we were told. The same thought had been forming in Maya's mind. What do you mean? Think about it. The specialized weapons training, the unusual tactical scenarios, Reynolds watching you like a hawk from day one. Cooper lowered his voice. And now a colonel who knows your father shows up in the middle of nowhere during a storm, right when we need extraction? Maya had no answer, but Cooper's suspicions aligned with her own growing sense that something larger was at play, something connected to her father's mysterious military past. 2 hours later, freshly showered and in crisp uniforms, Delta Squad assembled outside Training Hall C. The building was one they hadn't entered before, a nondescript structure on the edge of the base that most trainees never had reason to visit. Staff Sergeant Reynolds met them at the door. Inside, he ordered without his usual bark. The colonel is waiting. The interior of the hall was surprisingly modern compared to its exterior. Polished floors, advanced technology on the walls, and at the center, a large conference table where the silver-haired colonel waited. Beside him stood another officer Maya didn't recognize and a civilian in an expensive suit. Delta Squad reporting as ordered. Sir, Cooper announced as they lined up at attention. At ease, the colonel said. Take seats. They sat, exchanging uncertain glances. This was far from a standard debrief. I am Colonel Harrison Walker, the colonel began, Director of Special Operations Capability Development. This is Major Lawson, my executive officer, and Mr. Keller from the Defense Intelligence Agency. The civilian nodded acknowledgement but remained silent. For the past 7 weeks, Colonel Walker continued, you have been participating in what you believed was standard elite tactical training. In reality, you have been part of a specialized assessment program designed to identify candidates for a joint task force initiative. Maya felt her squadmate's eyes briefly turn to her, then back to the colonel. This program evaluates not only tactical proficiency but adaptability, creative problem-solving, and team integration under stress. Your squad has demonstrated exceptional capabilities in these areas, particularly in the last 3 weeks. The colonel opened a folder before him. I want to address some of the unconventional techniques you've been employing. Specifically, the building entry method and approach formations demonstrated by Sergeant Chen. Maya sat straighter, her heart rate increasing. These techniques are not found in any standard Army field manual, the colonel said. They are, in fact, proprietary tactical procedures developed by a specialized unit that operated primarily in Southeast Asia during the late 1990s and early 2000s. A unit known by its code, designation Black Viper. A sharp intake of breath from several squad members broke the silence. Black Viper was a joint special forces and intelligence gathering unit tasked with high-risk operations in denied areas, the colonel continued. Their methodologies were never widely disseminated and remained classified until recently. Which raises an interesting question. His eyes found Maya's. How did you come to know these techniques, Sergeant Chen? All eyes turned to her. Maya swallowed, suddenly understanding. My father, she said softly. He must have been part of Black Viper. Colonel Walker nodded slowly. Master Sergeant Thomas Chen was one of the original members of Black Viper, one of the best operators I ever had the privilege to command. The revelation hung in the air. Maya's mind raced through memories, her father teaching her to move silently through woods to spot details others missed, to shoot with uncanny precision. Skills passed down without explanation, presented as simple father-daughter activities rather than specialized training. He never told me, Maya said, more to herself than the room. He wouldn't have, Colonel Walker replied. The unit's existence was strictly classified. Even family members were told their loved ones served in conventional units. He smiled slightly. But Tom Chen was never one to leave his daughter unprepared for the world. So he taught you what he could without explaining why. Cooper broke the silence. Sir, with respect, what does this have to do with our training program? The colonel nodded to the civilian who spoke for the first time. Black Viper was deactivated in 2010 as part of a restructuring initiative. Recent developments in global security have prompted a reevaluation of that decision. We're selectively reactivating certain specialized capabilities, including those pioneered by Black Viper. You're rebuilding the unit, Patel said. Understanding dawning. Not exactly, Colonel Walker replied. We're creating something new that incorporates the best elements of previous programs. The training you've undergone was designed to identify candidates with the right combination of skills and adaptability. All of us? Bell asked from his seat, his leg now properly cast and propped on a chair. All of you have shown promise, the colonel confirmed, but some have demonstrated particular aptitude. His eyes returned to Maya. Sergeant Chen, your instinctive grasp of Black Viper methodologies, techniques you weren't even aware were specialized, is remarkable. What you demonstrated in the field exercise yesterday was what we call a Black Viper mark. A what, sir? Maya asked. A tactical intuition that goes beyond training, the ability to see what others miss, to adapt standard procedures to exceptional circumstances, to lead without hesitation when necessary. The colonel leaned forward. Your father had it. Apparently, so do you. The civilian Keller added, We've been watching your squad closely, particularly after Sergeant Reynolds reported Sergeant Chen's unusual tactical approaches. When we connected her to Thomas Chen, we accelerated the evaluation timeline. Maya's mind was reeling. My father knows about this? Colonel Walker and Keller exchanged a glance. Not yet, the colonel said. But he will. If you accept what we're offering, that is. Which is what exactly, sir? Cooper asked. Advanced training. Major Lawson spoke for the first time. For those who qualify and volunteer, followed by assignment to a new multi-domain task force that will operate in challenging environments. In other words, Keller added, the opportunity to be part of something few soldiers ever experience, something that makes a difference in ways most never see. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about completing training anymore. It was an invitation to a world Maya had never known existed, yet had been prepared for her entire life. The choice is yours, Colonel Walker said. Take some time to consider. Those who aren't interested will receive excellent evaluations and continue their military careers with our highest recommendations. Those who join us, and he smiled slightly. Well, that's a longer conversation. I'm in, Maya said without hesitation, surprising even herself. If my father helped build the original unit, I want to be part of carrying that forward. Colonel Walker nodded, unsurprised. And the rest of you? One by one, the members of Delta Squad voiced their acceptance. Even Bell, from his seat with his leg propped up, confirmed his interest once he was healed. Good, the colonel said. Major Lawson will brief you on the next steps. But first, he turned to Maya. There's someone who wants to speak with you, Sergeant Chen. He pressed a button on a console, and a screen on the wall flickered to life. The face that appeared made Maya's breath catch. Her father. Older than the photo she carried, but with the same steady eyes. Hello, Maya, he said, his voice exactly as she remembered despite the months since they'd last spoken. Dad, she managed. You're part of this? Advisory capacity only these days, he replied with a small smile. But yes, I've been consulted on the new program. His expression grew more serious. I never told you about my service because I wanted you to find your own path. But it seems some things run in the family. The Black Viper mark, Maya said, understanding now. Her father nodded. Colonel Walker recognized it in you, just as he did in me years ago. I'm proud of you, Maya. Not because you're following in my footsteps, but because you carved your own path and still ended up exactly where you're meant to be. The screen stayed active as Colonel Walker stood. We'll give you a moment, he said, motioning for the others to follow him out of the room. As the door closed, leaving Maya alone with her father's image, she felt a weight lift that she hadn't even known she carried. The weight of always feeling different, of having skills she couldn't explain, of sensing there was something more to her father's quiet lessons than he had ever said. So, her father said with a familiar twinkle in his eye, I hear they ridiculed you in training. Maya smiled, remembering those difficult early weeks that now seemed so distant, only until they saw the Black Viper mark. Her father laughed. That's my girl. Now let me tell you what you're really getting yourself into. As her father began explaining the true nature of the program she'd just joined, Maya felt a sense of coming home to a place she'd never known existed. A place where her unusual skills weren't just accepted but valued, where the instincts her father had cultivated in her would help protect others, and where she finally understood the legacy she carried. The ridicule of those early training days was forgotten now, replaced by something far more valuable. Respect earned through action, trust built through shared hardship, and the knowledge that she was her father's daughter, in ways that went far beyond what anyone could see on the surface. Delta Squad would never be the same. Neither would she, and Maya Chen wouldn't have it any other way.